Welcome to part 2 of How The Sims 4 Failed Me. If this is the first part that you're seeing, you might want to start at part 1. Let's talk about everything DLC this time around, starting with release schedule. The Sims 4 is the first Sims game that only gets one expansion a year. Or quite specifically, only the last expansion was exactly a year apart, the others were about 10-11 months. Which is close enough to being one a year. It has game packs and stuff packs as well. However, game packs for me do not justify losing a whole expansion a year, because we only get 2 game packs a year. It takes about 3 game packs to make an old school expansion. On top of that, game pack topics tend to be very squished down to a very specific thing, and you cannot guarantee that you will get more of that thing in the line. To give an example, we had Outdoor Retreat, now we have Adventure. We're about 1 pack off from having 3 holiday destinations. However, these holiday destinations feel smaller than, for example, those that came in World Adventures in The Sims 3, where you just got 3 up front and it was massive areas with lots of different dungeons to explore and different skills attributed to them. Second point would be recycling content. So not only do we have less content to begin with, we're also now repeating content that we already had released. For example, Dine Out, restaurants, vet clinic and stores operate all on the exact same system and in the exact same way. Outdoor Retreat and Adventure are very similar. They mostly just create a set of game rules and then reuse it, which allows them to push content out faster. However, it feels like if you're gonna package me things separate and then sell it to me separately, it feels like then you should actually invest the work in order to make it unique. Otherwise, I kinda expect it to be given to me together with the other content, as that is how it used to be previously. Such as in The Sims 2, if you wanted to run a restaurant or have a store, as long as you had open for business, you could do both. And the third point, piecemealing content. What I mean by that is that a lot of the content seems like it belonged to somewhere else. Like content previous to it got watered down in order to sell it to you separately. And at the same time, that just could be their themes being too similar and there not being enough unique themes. My examples of piecemealing content would be City Living, Get Together and Vampires all going together really well. That could have been 1 pack. But you could argue here going, oh, one had this kind of connotation, one had another kind of connotation. Could just be theme repeat, which once again, considering that if The Sims 4 lasted the exact same amount of time as other sim games, you would only have 5 expansions. A theme repeat seems like a very bad idea. But then we got pets, cats and dogs, and then we got pet stuff, which included a single small animal, set finishers for cats and dog, which was really awkward, and recolored clothes from cats and dogs, which was also quite awkward, which made it look very much like they did just what I said, where they divided one expansion into multiple packs to release later. I don't like that practice. It makes it look like they're just trying to milk money out of you, which I think is what EA is currently doing. And despite The Sims 3 having a store, it didn't feel like it as much back then, and it most definitely did not feel like that The Sims 2 and 1 era, despite the fact that there's being negative reviews given to The Sims 2 due to having stuff packs, which I can understand. People were already seeing that as selling very small amount of content for a lot of money. But essentially, it got really worse. this time around. All of that leads to lack of meaningful content. We have watered down expansions, expansions of repeating themes, a whole bunch of limitations. Every single thing that they're reintroducing to the game, they go, oh, we couldn't have done it as well as previous times. There's a limitation here, and there's a limitation there, and that's a limitation. So everything that we get back, and we mostly are just getting things back, tend to be of a lesser value than the previous expansion of the previous game. For example, cats and dogs are just cats and dogs, and they said, oh, because they're not, you cannot even control them, that makes them so much more realistic and unpredictable, and they could do so much more amazing stuff. Well, actually, if you look at all of the animations that they do have, they do not have more than The Sims 2 cats and dogs did, except they have facial animations. So yeah, so that was a nice excuse. So essentially we went down from The Sims 3 pets, and we're sort of down from The Sims 2 pets as well, because that one had small critters with it, if I remember correctly, at least. And city living, well, that was mostly just apartment life repackaged, but they needed to not make it so obvious, so they were like, look at the city that we're selling you! Oh, and by the way, you can't build your own apartments, so essentially we're selling you a game world inside of an expansion, hooray! 90% of items used in that one were not even unique ones. There are very few unique interaction items available in city living. So you're just getting old content resold to you, but worse than before. It just, that content, the fact that it's watered down, the fact that your creativity is stifled with it, it just doesn't last. So you feel more content starved in this game than you ever did ever before, which suits EA just fine because they can sell you a stuff pack every quarter. I'm actually surprised that we didn't get one stuff pack this quarter, and I don't know whether that's a good sign or a bad one actually, because that might mean that the whole game is dying, which likely it isn't, because they will likely announce seasons in EA Play. And that leads to our fifth point of lack of exploration of unique ideas. People, and me, tend to be a lot more forgiving about limitations if it is something that we haven't seen before. Vet clinics did receive their side of flack for being kiddified diseases that are meaningless, and they're actually a recycled dine-out system. But they had a semi-positive attitude from people because we never had a vet clinic before, and there is a lot of things that we haven't done in Sims before. We haven't actively played a kid in school before. We haven't actively managed a school or taught in a school. We haven't ever had a farm expansion, which a lot of people would love. They would love to have cows, and they would love to have chickens, and they would love to have a farmer's market and to sell very specific crop stuff. In The Sims 3 store, you could buy a cow and chicken object. I actually even think it was only the chicken object, which was an object. It wasn't actual chickens. Chicken wasn't the pet. That just was never done. When people saw the fact that we take spaceships to the alien planet for the first time, when the regular The Sims released, and I think that must have been Get to Work. Yeah, I think it was Get to Work that introduced that. Everybody was all like, oh, so could we live on an alien planet? Because we never done that before. We never had, you know, that unique landscape. They would have been forgiven then it was a bit empty, because we never done it before. And that's kind of the point. The Sims 4 is not trying to explore all of those things that it could. It's trying to replicate successful content from games that came before it, but do it on a lesser scale, and it shows, which is sad, which makes me very unexcited for upcoming DLCs. So that would be my main reason, my reason for disliking The Sims 4 number 2, which is the DLC content. You would think it is silly, but we got used to the Sims games being completed by DLC, so if every DLC that comes out is a disappointment, then you're already not invested in the future of the lifespan remaining of this game.